he told the priests. "Let's get on with it. My troops have a long march ahead." "Everything is prepared, my lord," a priest replied. But before any of them had a chance to move, Hezekiah heard his mother shouting as she ran up the hall from the king's harem. "No, wait! Stop!" She was in her bare feet and was wrapping her outer garment around her as she ran. Her dark hair flowed uncombed down her back. Hezekiah tried to squirm free to go to her, but one of the soldiers held him back. "What are you doing?" she cried. "Where are you taking my sons?" "King Ahaz is holding a special sacrifice before the army marches," Uncle Maaseiah said. "Our northern border is under attack." "What does that have to do with my children? They're only babies." She hugged her robes tightly around herself and shivered. "Ahaz wants all of his sons to take part." Uncle Maaseiah signaled to his soldiers, and they quickly moved across the hallway to block her path, but not before Hezekiah saw all the color drain from her face. "No! Wait!" she cried. "What kind of sacrifice?" Uncle Maaseiah turned his back on her and motioned to his men. "Let's get on with it." Hezekiah's mother began to scream, and the sound filled him with terror. He could hear her fighting desperately to get past the wall of men, to reach him and Eliab, but the soldiers held her back. "Mama!" Hezekiah cried out. "I want Mama!" He struggled to go to her, but one of the men picked him up as if he weighed nothing at all. Hezekiah wanted to fight, but he felt limp with terror, and the soldier who held him was much too strong. His mother's screams faded in the distance behind them as the soldier carried Hezekiah through the maze of corridors and down the palace stairs to the courtyard. Outside, the sky had begun to lighten as the sun rose behind the Judean hills. A huge crowd of people stood waiting in the palace courtyard, spilling over into the street outside the gate. A brisk wind whipped Hezekiah's tunic against his legs as the soldier lowered him to the ground. The thin fabric offered no warmth against the morning chill, and Hezekiah shivered with cold and fear. He had never seen so many soldiers before, lined up in even rows, their swords gleaming as they stood at attention before his father, the king. King Ahaz wore the crown of Judah on his head, and the royal robes embroidered with the symbol of the house of David. He was a large, round-bellied man, whose voice always sounded loud and angry. Everyone in the palace cowered before him, and Hezekiah had learned to fear him too. He couldn't imagine why his father would order him and his brothers from their beds at dawn to stand with all these soldiers. As Hezekiah stood shivering in the windy courtyard, the tension in the air, the solemn look on every face, filled him with dread. The assembly began to march, led by King Ahaz and Uncle Maaseiah. The city elders and nobles followed close behind. Then the escort of soldiers and priests began to move. One of the soldiers gripped Hezekiah's shoulder and pushed him forward with all the other young princes of Judah. But instead of climbing the steep hill behind the palace to the temple of Yahweh, where the king usually offered his sacrifices, the procession wound down the hill through the narrow city streets. They passed the spacious, dressed stone mansions of the nobility, then marched through the market area, now quiet and deserted, the booths shuttered, the colorful awnings rolled up for the night. Hezekiah saw people watching the procession from their rooftops and peering from behind latticed windows. As the street narrowed, the soldiers squeezed closer, and their swords pressed against Hezekiah's side. Where were they taking him? What was going to happen to him? Twice he stumbled as he missed a stair in the street, but the soldiers quickly gripped his arms and pulled him to his feet. They finally reached the massive gate on the southern wall of Jerusalem and passed down the ramp out of the city. Now the silent dawn began to echo with the beat of drums pounding in the distance. Hezekiah saw a craggy wall of cliffs, dark and foreboding, guarding the entrance to the valley of Hinnom. As the procession turned into the narrow valley, he glimpsed a column of smoke billowing